Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Explode Your Expert Business Show. This is the show for coaches, speakers, and trainers who want to grow their businesses while making an impact in the world. My name is Simone Vincenzi, and I'm your host, and we bring you new episodes every single week. Sometimes it's a solo episode where I lift the veil on things that we are doing behind the scene in our business that is worth sharing and that you can take inspiration from, or you can learn the latest trends that are happening in the coaching and speaking industry on a business level. Sometimes we interview clients and case studies so you can see what they are doing to grow their business. And other times we have, like today, incredible guests that they're sharing their area of expertise. And today we are going to talk about lighting your creating fire to explode your coaching business. So it's all about creativity, and we know how much creativity is important for your business and for your personal life. So stay tuned and make sure you listen to this episode until the end. But before we get going, I need to remind you about our webinar conversion kit, because as you know, right now, after the pandemic and in the world that we are living now, we are in a digital first world. And while before it was easier to connect with clients and meeting people and building those relationships, right now everything happens online. And having a presentation that is designed to attract clients and convert clients to your business, it is crucial. It's not a nice to have anymore. It is a must for every business. And that's why we have put together, after running more than 600 webinars, can you believe it? Run more than 600 webinars. We put together our webinar conversion kit, which is the creme de la creme of all that we have learned from my studies I've done on the webinar field and the testing that we did on how to create a high converting presentation that you can use over and over again, and they can give you clients in a predictable way. So make sure you check it out. It's the webinar conversion kit. You can find it at webinarconversionkit.com, or you can click the link below that is in the show notes, whether you're on YouTube or on a podcast platform, and then see it there. Also, a couple more things. If you have not subscribed yet to the show, make sure you subscribe. And also, if you like the show until the end, then let us know. Leave us a review. They are really important for us. It's the lifeblood of every podcast. All right, now all the housekeeping are out of the way, so we can introduce our guest. And today we have the author of 17 books. Can you believe it? 17 books, including the most recent book, Coaching the Brain. Is the co-founder of the International Coaching Community, founder of the Neuroscience Coaching Center, and he will bring his insights on creativity from neuroscience and coaching. And today, with how to light the creative fire to explode your coaching business, please welcome Joseph O'Connor. Joseph, good to see you here.
Good. Great. Thank you, Simone. It's great to be here.
Well, so creativity, I gotta start. What is, in your opinion, because I know creativity is very personal, and I like to start with a curveball question on my episode. So the question for you is, what is the most creative thing that you think you have done in your life? And you can, creativity is very personal. So I let you pick one and let's run with it.
That's a difficult question. Well, it's a difficult question in the sense that there are so many possibilities, because I think that everybody is creative. In other words, they're able to do something that uniquely expresses themselves in a unique way that's of value to other people. They say three things to do in your life, I think was the old saying: to have a child, to plant a tree, to write a book. Well, I have done those three. The children were the most wonderful, but I can't claim any credit for the creativity of the children that come, but it's wonderful.
We can claim a very little credit. Yeah,
I can claim
just a little, and then for the rest. It's not hard to
Yeah, then
break.
you just, and then it just goes, and it's out of control. But so creativity, I think, for myself, and this is the easiest one to come across for me because it's the most recent,
Sure.
and that's writing a science fiction novel. And that's something that I've been promising myself to do for years when I had time. You know, I'm sure we all have this thing. I'm going to do this. I just, just when this stops, or when I have time here, or, then I'll be able to do it. And about a month ago, I thought, I'm never going to have time unless I make time.
Yeah.
So I did. And it's been a remarkable thing so far, at least in terms of the feeling, because first of all, I sit down feeling, what on earth am I going to do about this? There's nothing there. And then I get into it, and it's amazing, the ideas that flow. And it's about that old saying, in order to be creative and to do something of value, you've got to kind of jump off the cliff, and then you make your parachute as you go down, as it were.
Yeah.
And it always happens. So that's my personal one at the moment, but I think that applies to all sorts of creativity, where really basically the first thing is you've got to commit to it. It's got to be important to you. You've got to make time for it, and then you've just got to commit to it.
Now, so science fiction novel. What's the novel about?
Oh, I can't describe that, otherwise it wouldn't work. No, well,
Okay.
basically, it's about 50 years in the future, and it features an elite assassin and a banking conspiracy round, well, the new science of NFTs and blockchain.
Wow. What was the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself while writing that novel?
The things that this and many other things are as easy or as difficult as you make them. In other words, as long as I had the idea of, I haven't got time, or I've never written a novel before, that must be really difficult. I'll do it later. It's not so important. As long as I have those ideas, it's not going to happen. As soon as I have the idea of, yeah, I want to do this, this is important, and I'm going to give it a go. As soon as I have that and I give it a go, it flows. It's almost the difference between there's nothing and then there's everything. So that's been my learning. So in the sense, it's much easier than I thought, but also quite difficult, because the initial difficulty is giving up the block that stops you.
And is that what you find is generally the first stumbling block that stops people from being creative? Or do you find this to be across the board? Because I know that's your field, the creativity. So, or is that something unique that just happened to you? Like,
no, I think that's true. I mean, tell you a story of my first book, the very first one I wrote, which was a book called Not Pulling Strings. And it was about learning music and guitar and teaching, because I was a professional classical guitarist. I used to teach and I used to give concerts. So I thought, yeah, it's time to kind of pass on what I know. So I, at the time, I remember I went to a workshop by a very interesting and gifted American pianist called Eloise Ristad. And she'd written a book called A Soprano on Her Head. And her book was about basically overcoming stage fright, which you can imagine, guitar and music.
It's huge.
Live performers, you've got to do it in the time, and that's it. So, and it was an interesting book, very interesting. And the title came from the fact that she had an opera singer that was paralyzed by stage fright. And one of the breakthroughs that she made with her was to get her to stand on her head and sing. Which I think worked, because first of all, it was a big pattern interrupt. It's like, what? And secondly, when you stand on your head, your throat muscles relax in different ways. So there's probably a reason there. But anyway, she gave this wonderful, wonderful workshop. And I went home from that workshop and I thought, I want to write a book. And then immediately in came an internal voice with a little kind of slightly condescending and sneering voice tone, goes, you can't write a book. And I go, well, hold on a minute. I've never actually written one. I've never even tried. How do I know whether I can write a book or not? I actually don't know. The only question is really, do I want to? And is it important to me? Is it something I really want to do? And is it valuable? And the answer to that was yes and yes. So then I go, okay, well, I'm going to find out whether I can write a book or not. And by writing a book, I mean something that has some value for other people besides myself and my parents.
not like Stephen King or can I put my thought on paper in a way that makes sense to other people? That's like the starting point.
Yeah. No, you don't make a lot of money from books at all. It's not the point. But the point is to, is there something of value that I have that I can pass out in this form that other people can learn from? And it seemed like there was, so I didn't stop.
It's really relevant to this conversation for me at the moment, because with GTeX we have about GTeX, I manage actively 2 companies at the moment, and then we have another 6 companies we have invested in. So business life is busy. There is a lot going on. But I had a thought for a few months, and it's not going away. And when I got these things that are not going away, like I know I stopped myself from being impulsive on making business decisions, because I can come up with a business idea every day. But this one is sticking. And somehow I've been stopping myself. And it's very relevant because one of my biggest passions is basketball. I play basketball multiple times a week. I love it. I play in a professional team, in a semi-professional team. It's like second division in the UK, in the UK league.
Good.
And I'm passionate about bringing people together. That's why we have created the GTeX community. For me, GTeX is business training, but the primary part is bringing people together. That's what I think I was born for. I'm a magnet for bringing people together. And wanted to create holidays, basketball themed holidays, for people can go away, have their basketball holidays. Their wives or their partners, they have like an exclusive spa experience, so they don't resent their partners going away and play basketball, and they can have time to do things together. And I've been talking about it to a few people, but somehow I've been telling the story to, I'm too busy. I got too many things going on. Basketball holidays with COVID is not going to work. And I've been thinking in the past few days, it's like, what can I just start? Like, I remember before when I started my first business, I didn't have all this. I don't have time and I don't have this. It was just the excitement to start. So it's very relevant, what you shared. How did you get to the point, or when you have these blocks, how do you get to the point when you're like moving yourself forward, even if on paper or in your mind, like you got too much going on, it's too busy, there's too many things? Because that's, I think, what also stops a lot of other people doing things like this, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like spending your money, isn't it? There's a lot of things that you could spend your money on and you want to spend your money on, but in the end, you've got a limited amount of money. You make priorities. So there are some things that you do and there's some things that you don't do. And I think it's the same in terms of time. There's a limited amount of time, and that's it. It's important to spend that time on something that is valuable and enjoyable for you, and hopefully creative for you as well, because I think that all human beings are naturally creative, and given good opportunities, they have amazing things to offer, everyone. And also of value to other people. You're saying you're bringing together other people, and there are many ways to bring together other people. And one of them certainly is through knowledge, leadership, basketballs, anything you like. So it's sometimes you've just got to be ruthless with yourself. You know, they say that the most powerful word is no. And I think that's true. In the end, that's what you have to exercise. And I think it's funny, that's one of the very first words that we learn as toddlers, which drives our parents mad.
No.
And it's the way that you actually assert your own individuality. You know, you say no. And when you say no, that's it. You know, you've drawn a boundary. And this is me, and that's not. So you've got to say no to things that you have said yes to, or you're tempted to say yes to, and particularly for very creative people. And it's very difficult because they know they're going to be good at many, many things. And the old rule applies that if you want something done well, give it to a busy person because they're good at it. So the busy, creative people attract more and more and more. And that can become a bit overwhelming. And in the end, everybody's got to say, okay, no, 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 this is what I've got to focus on. And if I don't do this, I know I'll regret it.
Well, what was the most difficult no you had to say that you're willing to share on this podcast? Because I know there might be some things that we might not be willing to share in some personal situations, but what the most difficult no that you had to say?
And there's many examples. I'm just thinking of a context. I mean, I've separated myself from a lot of business enterprises that I've been involved in, either because they're going well, but I just don't want to continue, or they're going well and I'd like to continue, but at the same time, I can't do everything. I moved to São Paulo in Brazil for 7 years back in 2020. So in that sense, it was difficult to say no to the life that I had in the UK, in London at the time, but it was absolutely the right decision. And that was because of my wife and partner, Andrea. And that's why I moved to Brazil.
Yeah.
And then we both moved back, or I moved back, and we moved back together some years ago. But it's always about, you know, things have value until they don't. That's not to say they didn't have value in the first place, but there's always new things coming in. And so we need to be constantly evaluating and nimble and being able to change. And of course, especially these days, not put all your eggs in one basket.
That's a very good point. Things have value until they don't have it, which sounds like a very simple statement, but it's quite deep though, because I think, you know, when we are in it, like I remember, for example, you know, let's think about partnerships. You know, I thought that my ex-girlfriend was the best partner that I could have ever had. Right? In that moment, it was incredible value. And now I'm married to someone else. Right? And that's the best part, right?
Yes.
And that's things on relationships, but I can go on in careers. I used to work and manage restaurants and work in the catering industry, and like a good stereotypical Italian. And I remember once leaving a restaurant where I was earning really good money. It was an incredible environment, and I decided to make a different choice. And it was a very difficult no, but after a few months, something else came in to fill that so-called void.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, at the time, I think you've got to be fair with yourself. At the time, we're all doing the best we can. You know, at the time, this is the best I've got. And I think it's important to commit to that, because if you hold back and think, well, maybe I'll just, you know, maybe I'll do that, but you never know, there might be something else coming along. So I better just be, you know, hold back a little bit. You end up doing things never fully. And in the end, you don't know whether they could be successful or not, because you think, well, you know, I didn't really put enough of myself in that. So I think it's better, you know, what you've got, it's valuable. And at the time, go for it. And then, you know, things can change, yes, and be willing to do that. Doesn't discount or make any less valuable what you did before.
I'm curious to know now, what got you started in studying the field of creativity? What was the moment that you said, you know what, I want to become an expert in creativity? It's not something that you probably, when they ask you when you were a kid, what do you want to do when you grow up? So I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a creativity expert.
Yeah, that's the way the conversation stopper, isn't it? I wanted to be a dentist or a footballer. Didn't turn out that way. I think it's not something you can. I think it's something you learn about if you can. I mean, creativity is not something that you can try to be. The moment you start going, I'm going to be creative, I'm going to be creative, then the very effort of being creative will stop that. In anything, the moment you try to do it, it's like trying to be spontaneous. The moment you try to be spontaneous, you're not. And I think the moment you try to be creative, you're not, because you're trying. It's, don't push the river. Just let it flow. What I would say is that my background in music, particularly, and coaching, and neuroscience, has primed me, all of those, in terms of what we call creativity.
Yeah.
And of course, it's something that we recognize and apply in every single field that there is of human endeavor.
Was that a particular catalyst, like a particular moment or something that you either read or studied that ignited that curiosity to go into this field? Because I remember, like, I'm a big student of creativity myself, and less from a neurological point of view, but I like to hear stories. That's why I asked you like a few stories as well. And there was a TEDx talk, which is a TED talk, which is I'm sure you've heard, you watched, from Sir Ken Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Which is probably the most famous TED talk of all time, if I remember well. And at that time, he was my restaurant manager, like it was the owner of the restaurant that I was working in.
Wow.
That he was the person who got me into coaching and got me out of restaurants, funny enough. And we were always talking, and he gave me the book and said, watch this. And he gave me the book from Ken Robinson around creativity. And that was a complete eye opener for me. And that's where I realized that, you know what, I have more to offer to the world than being a waiter. I was 22 at the time, so I was very lucky that I found that mentor and those resources so early, because that's where I went into coaching when I was 22. So that was a blessing, coming across the 30 in terms of age. But that was what ignited my curiosity. So that was the catalyst for me. What was that? I don't know if you can remember that catalyst moment for you.
I can't remember any particular one moment, but certainly I started playing the guitar when I was about 11, and I was pretty good by the time I was late teens. But it was fascinating how you can take, those 12 notes, 12 tones of Western music, and create infinite amounts of music, of which some have value and some are inspired. And I'm thinking, this is incredible. What's the difference between taking those 12 notes and putting them in a way where people go, oh yeah, okay, and where they go, wow, and listen to it and write it down and pay for it, and it's still played and listened to 500 years later. There's something there. There's some spirit there. What is it? I don't think there's ever going to be you don't get an intellectual answer to that. I don't think, but I think you can get a lived answer to that, to some extent.
Yeah, if talking about music is fascinating. I don't consider myself a musician, but I love music, and I can read basic music, but I've always played with instruments. So at the beginning, it was harmonica I played with. It was really fun. And then I settled in with a didgeridoo, which is an odd instrument for an Italian to play. And what I started doing is beatboxing with the didgeridoo. And when you were talking about, that's how I opened my TEDx talk, like doing beatboxing with the didgeridoo. And that was the attention grabber of the beginning of the presentation, right? You gotta start your talk with an attention grabber. I studied public speaking. So, and it's fascinating, you know, you were talking about the 12 notes, and you got these 12 notes and you make music. With the didgeridoo, you have a tube and the vibration of your lips. And you can create all sorts of sounds. You can create all sorts of melodies. You can create all sorts of rhythm with it. And is part of the creative process. So my question for you is, you know, what would you say to someone who says, you know what, you know, good for you, you're a musician, you were starting, you know, whether you like it or not, music is a creative process, so you had an advantage. What would you say to that person that they don't think they are creative though?
You don't. Well, what would I say? I think I would say something like, what do you mean by creative? I think that might be my first question, because many people believe that creativity has to produce something brand new, sparkling, surprising, where everybody goes, wow, never seen that before. And that just doesn't happen. Creativity is always a mixture of what's known already, put together with other things that are known already, but in a completely different way, in a different context, which then has value, either in terms of, I like to say, you know, the good, the true, and the beautiful. You know, it's going to be good, it's going to be true, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Some kind of way. So it has value for other people, because anyone can be creative in terms of producing something new, and it doesn't have value for anyone else. But to be able to take things that are pre-existing, there's 12 musical notes, they've been around for, you know, millennia, and to put them together in a new way, in a new context, maybe even creating a new genre of music. Now that's something. Just let me circle back a moment, because you asked about a particular time that got me creativity. And I now, there's a particular time I was playing, it was in the 60s. I was in a band. Everyone was in a band in the 60s. And we were jamming. In other words, we were just messing around. 3 guitarists messing around. And we used to mess around for half an hour or so at a time, just seeing what would come out. And some of it was pretty bad. Some of it was nothing much. But there was one time where there was just absolute magic. And it wasn't me, but I gave something to that. It was the perfect moment where 3 people just happened to do something at the same time that produced something amazing. And I think for me also, and what I also want to say is, it's not just about individual creativity. You know, it's not just about the lone person sitting at home and producing the masterpiece. We all stand on each other's shoulders, and some of the best things are precisely that. They're with other people, where you're just there and it just sparks somehow. And then the question becomes, well, how can you make that spark happen? And that's something else.
Well, let's try to answer that question, shall we?
Shall we?
Shall we? Now that I have you here, let's try.
How do you create that? I think you have to be open, first of all, paradoxically, not to try to create something brilliant, because if you sit down trying to create something brilliant, again, you're trying to do something and it's likely that's not going to happen. And take out the ego a bit as well, because if you want to shine as the lead guitarist in that particular example, then you know, I would always be trying to dominate as lead guitarist, and wouldn't allow anything else to happen. So I think you've got to tone down the ego in that situation. And I think that there is some either explicit or implicit learning involved as well. You know, the three of us played the guitar pretty well, so we had some skills there that then came out of that. But we all have implicit learning. We all have a life, an experienced life, a felt life of uncountable experiences, unique experiences that add up to our implicit learning. And that is I'm tempted to use database, but I don't want to make it computer or mathematical, but that's kind of what we draw on all the time for our creativity. And we all have that. It's just different. It just depends what sort of context you're going to be creative in. If you want to be creative in a business context, then, you know, you can't expect to not know anything about business, go in there and be able to create something immediately. You're going to have to learn the ropes. And I think it's the same in many of those fields. But at the same time, any of those expertise-led fields are still going to draw on the unique experience of the person who has that expertise.
It is really interesting, because what I'm hearing you saying, and if I also reflect back on my own experience, I think we can fairly say that it's pretty true, that we also need to get to the point in terms of learning a certain skill where we can then allow the flow to happen. What I mean about that is, I remember I started playing basketball seriously about 5 years ago. So I was 28, and I was like, I dedicated all my life to, like, a good 10 years of my life to business and to working, and did nothing else, just worked my arse off. And I was like, you know what? I like basketball. I want to restart playing basketball now that I've got a bit more capacity. I have a team, I got things. Why don't I do something for myself? And so after stopping, last time I played, probably I was like 18, 28, or stopped for 8 years. And at the beginning, there wasn't much creativity in my basketball. I was literally a lot of thinking about what I was going to do, what I was going to put the ball, frustration because the shots wouldn't go in, frustration because I'm pretty short. And so everyone was just destroying me because I didn't have enough skills. And then I became a little better, and played regularly over this period of 5 years. And now there is a time, and it doesn't happen often, but there are times where just things go in, or there is my body just knows what to do. I don't think about I'm going left or I'm going right, or I'm now doing a fake. My body just does it.
Yes.
And that's, I think, is an expression of creativity in that particular skill of basketball. Now, let's take it to a level of the NBA or the UK league or the European league for the element of sport. When you see incredible players doing things that they don't, how did they do that? And they say, I don't know, I just did it, right? And so, is that true that actually the skill, is that also what allows that creativity to happen, or that flow to happen? Or
yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends on the context, but you know, I learned the guitar, and I put in a lot of time teaching my hands to move in a particular way, and that's technique. And the point of the technique is to bring you to a place where you can forget the technique, and just allow that technique to let the music flow. That's the point. That's the whole point of technique. To get good at something is to I think to reach the point where you don't think about being good at it anymore. You've done that bit. It just allows it to come through. So, you know, in the basketball, in the playing of music, in any field, if if you've done the work, then there's going to be a time, as you said, that flow experience that's been written about so much, where suddenly you're not doing it anymore. It's just being done through you, as it were. And it's a wonderful feeling. And of course, the moment you think, wow, I'm doing really great here, I'm in flow, of course.
And then you're out of flow.
That's it. Catch 22. So, but yes, I think, all what you describe is absolutely right. And I think we all, in many ways, want to recapture some experience of flow that we've had.
I want to know, how did then we bring this now into the coaching conversation, either running a coaching business or when we coach clients in our coaching practice? How do we then bridge this gap? Because we've been talking around more the philosophy or science of creativity. And now let's apply it to the specific field of coaching. What have you come up with? What have you discovered?
Well, I think certainly as a coach, it's important that you listen to your client and what your client says. And that's what's the important thing. You don't try to impose your own ideas or mental models on what they're saying, but you listen. And out of what they say, so there develops a conversation, which is co-created. It's not like the coach doing coaching on the client. It's like a co-created conversation. My metaphor is mountain climbing, where the coach is the guide, and you don't know actually how high the mountain is, and you don't know the right path, but you have some expertise in mountains, so you can help the client on that path. And sometimes you go up and then you have to come down again and go up the other way. So as a coach, I think it's about really listening to the client and the other person, and not, as far as possible, not allowing your own biases or judgments to come in, and then something will develop. And at the same time, if you're talking about a business or coaching business, that's more complex because it's not interpersonal. But I think all business people will have had times where they're just kind of sitting back and letting the thoughts move around. And they go, just a minute. Now I think that might work. And then they spend the next 2 years, seeing if it does or how well it does or something like that. That's two examples that come to mind.
They're great examples, because on one side, there is the trust in yourself and the creativity that you're putting in helping your clients, solving the challenges that they have. And then on the other side, for your own business, I kind of know, it's weird to say, but I kind of know when an idea is going to work or not. There is something within me that just doesn't give up on it. And I've learned to recognize it. That's the best way to describe it. I remember when I had the job offer to come and work in London, logically, with the situation that I had in Italy with my family and and what I was going through at the moment, it wasn't the logical decision. But something inside me said, no, you got to move. You got to go. And no matter what everyone else was saying around me, I made that decision. It wasn't an easy decision to make, but I knew it was the right decision.
Yeah.
Another example that I had recently was 3 years ago, we decided to launch a new program called the Profile Builder. I used to contribute to Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine. I used a lot of media to grow my business. And we never thought that, or created a program to help our clients raise their profile with the media. And we had quite a few conversations with our team, and we were 4 people who were talking about it, and 3 of them, and I was one of the 4, and 3 were against it. So it will not attract the right people that we wanted to work with. But something inside me said, no, this is the right thing to join. This is the right thing to do. he ended up being one of the most successful programs you ever launched. And the best program, because it was the first one that we delivered online that prepared us for the pandemic. The reason why we're still in business, before we were running an event company, we're running 200 events a year. The pandemic hit. But by that point, we already run 1 year of Profile Builder, and we already had marketing, sales systems in place and delivery system in place to deliver online. So that program saved our ass. Yeah. That's that literally. So there are all these examples, and I think that sometimes when you are, and I don't, and they often come to me when I'm either riding my bicycle or not when I'm not when I'm thinking about it. I think there is a bit of cliche, where you're in the shower or yeah. But you are not thinking about it, and suddenly it's like, boom, that's it.
Yes, yeah. You've got to not think about it in a particular way. If I kind of call on my neuroscience readings, there's parts of the brain called the default mode network, and it's involved in kind of daydreaming. And the daydreaming is all about me. It doesn't relate to other people, and it's not goal oriented, and it doesn't use any part of the brain that's involved in action. And that's not creativity. In fact, it's almost the opposite, because it's all about me, and it's not about other people. It's not goal oriented, and there isn't a connection. So, we're not talking here about just daydreaming about how nice it would be or something like that.
Yeah.
It's something a little bit different. And it's interesting, your example of and it happens a lot, I think, especially there's a lot of people, I think, now thinking, thank God, a couple of years ago, I did that, because if I hadn't, this would be pretty bad. And I think there's many more people like that than we know about. It's been very difficult, but it would be even more difficult, I think, if we hadn't taken some decisions at the time.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So now, final parts of the interview, lifting the veil. So that's where we ask all our guests to share something that either they discovered recently that people need to know about. It can be a practice, an app, a book, a website, a place to have dinner, anything that people need to know about it. What is that for you?
Wow, that is so much again. So much. People need to know. Difficult one again, because there's always the recent ones become, are more, well, they're more recent, so they're more easy to come to mind. There's a number of books recently that I've read. There's a number of books that I read many years ago and always come back to. And that's a really hard question to answer. Can you ask it again slightly differently, and maybe
sure. What is something that you have discovered recently that people need to know about because you find it incredibly useful for you?
Oh, okay. Well, that's well, I'll tell you what came to mind, and I'll say it anyway. Walking in the country, just seeing nature without it having to do anything or be anything. I'm lucky insofar as I live in a nice area of the countryside, but there's always some natural areas just to go out for a few minutes and go, wow, this is beautiful. And it just refreshes your spirit. And then when you come back and back to the computer, you've got that little bit of extra space in your head, because you've been in a world that is open rather than focused. And they were both necessary, but that's
yeah. Thank you for sharing. And it's something that I think with people staying close in house, it becomes I found myself, and I'm extremely extroverted, so I love to go out, I love to see places, I love to see people, I love to see new things. But I found myself actually having to convince myself to actually get out of the house. So I think after the months of being stuck indoor, now we are at the point where, actually, let's create some space. Let's take ownership of that and enjoy nature, enjoy life. That's why I love hiking.
Yeah.
I absolutely love hiking. My wife and I, every holiday we can, we have a hiking. We go somewhere where there are hiking trails or tracks where we can follow. For the same reason, for the very same reason, is an open world, something we are just there, not like we're just walking.
Yeah,
there's nothing else that other than walking.
Yeah, wonderful. I like to get lost. I don't know if you like to get lost on your hiking.
I have a problem with getting lost because then I don't come back. I have a terrible sense of like spatial awareness, and so I actually need to know where I am. Otherwise, I love getting lost, but I'm not sure I'm going to come back. So
okay, you do need to know eventually, of course, how to come back.
Exactly. Let's wrap up the interview. Joseph, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the show, and a very insightful interview, getting to know you better and getting to know your insights around creativity, your stories. I'm sure that now our listeners or whoever is watching, people that are watching, they're interested in getting to know more about you, maybe find out a bit more about the last book that you have written, or what you have for them. So over to you. How can people find more about you and what do you have to offer?
Oh, okay. Well, many thanks. It's been a great pleasure to speak with you, and we've had a great conversation. It's really nice. Thank you, Simone. Well, the website Coaching the Brain. I run courses on coaching using the insights of neuroscience, but in a practical way, because the last book was called Coaching the Brain, Practical Applications of Neuroscience to Coaching. So I think that's very important because it's fascinating enough. You can go inside the brain, but knowing all the Latin names of the different brain parts doesn't make you a better coach. You have to be able to apply it. So I do that. I also teach creative business writing there's a website, lambentwriting.com. So those are the two courses that I'm particularly interested in at the moment. Those, at the moment, those are the two that take my interest, and those are the two that I'd like people to know about.
All right, that's brilliant. So all the links are going to be in the show notes. So one is coachingthebrain.com. So that's one, coachingthebrain.com. And the other one is lambertwriting.com. So coachingthebrain.com and lambertwriting.
Yeah, it's Lambent.
Lambent writing. Thank you. Lambent writing. .com, and you can find all the links in the show notes, so make sure you scroll down, check them out. Check also Joseph's latest book as well, and particularly as we are here in the coaching and speaking field, having this extra tool and understanding from a neuroscience point of view how we can interact with our clients and be more effective. That's incredibly powerful. So make sure you check out those resources. Joseph, thank you very much for being here on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Simone. It's been a great pleasure for me too. Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching or listening. I cannot wait to see you next episode of Explode Your Expert Business Show. We have a few surprises with the new year. Maybe we are going to change the name of the show. Spoiler alert. So keep tuned for it. And if you haven't left a review yet or subscribe, what are you waiting for? Subscribe right now is really good for the podcast. We can get other incredible guests like Joseph, and also is really good for my ego. I really appreciate a good 5-star review and a new subscriber. So please do that. And until next time, remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.